of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations lands, which lands were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. This place is and will continue to be home for Indigenous people. So a very interesting addition is usually put there to say that we don't say that lightly. We're saying it to own it, and we say it to acknowledge not only the past, but just to add all the effects in the future because of that. There's been so many that I've learned just tangentially. I've learned, oh, that affected that affected, oh my goodness, just the subject of parenting, just the subject of residential, all these things. So we acknowledge the mistakes of the past, and we keep committing, and we're going to talk about that later, committing to doing something to reverse damages, to make up for it, and I think we all look at those 95 calls to action that we focused on each week for so long, and the sad truth is we aren't doing as well as we should with that. So we're acknowledging that. We're also committing ourselves to goodness in it. And so for those of you that are not in the same area that the West Hill property is in, wherever you are, we've heard from people in the States, we've heard from people in England, in the Britain, that you can do that too. You can look up what happened to your land, the land you're living on. You know, if you own your property, you own it. Well, do you own it? Who owned it before? And this sort of thing is really important. So we take the time to do that each Sunday, not lightly at all. And we welcome you. I'm not able to see as many screens as I could when I'm in the church hall with Glenn, but I'm assuming there's people from farther away than just West Hill area. So for those of you that are in the wider Ontario area, across Canada, across the Atlantic, we welcome you all to this time together. And we also want to acknowledge that doing this, not lightly, all to this time together. Now, I want to say to you, I just heard myself say that whole entire sentence back in an echo. Did you?
Yes. Yeah.
You didn't want to hear it twice.
Very sorry. That was my fault.
Oh, good.
Please leave the meeting.
It's not my. So am I repeating myself now? Am I repeating myself now? Just kidding. Am I repeating myself now?
No, you're not.
Okay.
No, only
No,
three
you're not.
times.
Okay. If I have a point that I think needs emphasis, I will repeat it, but that's not what's happening. So we recognize, and I'm saying Glenn's at his cottage, but if you got a good glimpse sometimes of the studio set up in the hall, you know the amount of equipment that is and will be necessary to put West Hill back in place and on Zoom forever. And that costs time and it costs effort. It brings the experience of people that know what to do. I couldn't possibly do it. And so I'm so grateful for Glenn and for Peter and for Dennis and for all those that help with the technical aspects to put together the programs, to put together the connections we make. It costs. And so we take time right now to appreciate every single person that puts time into West Hill to make it what it is. The board, the committees, the finance, everything. What you see on the screen is the result. There's so much behind that, and we appreciate it. And we ask for volunteers, and we're going to hear a bit more about that later. We ask for people to come forward and say, I'd like to be part of making it happen, not just watching it. And you're welcome to just watch it, but you're also very welcome to come and help be part of what makes it happen. There's no limit to the kind of things that can be done. And then also it's the finances. And I urge you to think about that, because supporting with the finances that are required to pay for the administration of West Hill, to pay for the equipment for West Hill, there's going to be more equipment. So if you're enjoying and you can, and only if you can, to help support that is welcome and highly appreciated. Also, I'm going to ask Mike if he would like to say something, and then we have Deb with a couple of announcements. So Mike, I wasn't sure if you would like to keep us up to date as board chair.
Thank you, Scott. Certainly just a few things to update. We did have a board meeting on Tuesday night and covered a lot of ground. One of the issues that we have been talking about is how we will be organizing ourselves to fill the supply minister spot. And so Anita DeRosier, who's with us this morning, is going to take the lead and announce some of the first steps that we want to take. So if I may refer to her at this point.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. As Scott said, there are opportunities to help, and have I got an opportunity for you? We need people to join a search committee, and if you've looked at your e-blast this week, and you probably have because you're here, you would have seen the notice that we need people to be on a search committee. If you know somebody who's not here this morning, please mention it to them so that we can get this as widely distributed as possible, because we'd like to get going as soon as possible. The search committee is going to have two missions. One, to find a supply minister until Greta's return, or if that doesn't happen, sadly, her retirement. And secondly, to find a permanent replacement for Greta upon her retirement. Unless you think Greta might be upset by us doing this, no, we understand from people in the know that she welcomes this, and the region also thinks this is something that we should do and get started on it very soon. Any minister who is thinking of making a move soon is already beginning to look, and it takes time for them to disconnect from where they are, give notice and so on, and make all the plans that are needed to make the move to West Hill. A search committee is usually about 3 to 6 people, but we're not worried about the rules exactly of that. We'll take people who we think will be great. Would lovely if we could have a variety of demographic on this, some young, some old, some in between. And we will be supported by the region with somebody called a pastoral relations liaison, a pastoral relations liaison. Yeah, repeated it. And that person will be coming in the very near future. The first mission to find the supply minister may not take as long as you might think, as we actually already have talked to somebody who seems quite interested. What we need to do is make a really tight job description of what we really want from the supply minister, so that that works out really effectively with everybody who's already involved in our gatherings and our way of life at West Hill. So please come join me. I'm going to spearhead the first part just because I've already been involved in talking to the first candidate that we've talked to. And I'd be happy to move off after that if somebody else wanted to take over. But I would love to have some company. And so far, nobody has said they want to come sit with me on this committee. So please think of this as a way that you can help your community. I'm sure we'll have lots of fun as well. Geographical doesn't matter. We're going to do this by Zoom. So whether you are in Canada, in the States, in the UK, or Africa, or wherever you are coming to us from, we are interested in having you be part of this committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Anita. So just continuing on with sort of updates from the board. We received the Vision Works document that a committee led by Scott had prepared. Just by the way, all of what I'm saying is in the newsletter and e-blast, but I'll just highlight the high points. And we think that the Vision Works document is a marvelous statement of who we are and defining our values. And we feel it is worthy and needing your consideration and review as we say this is who we are and how we operate. So we are planning to have one of our Sunday gatherings with this as the topic, and have Scott and perhaps some members of the committee go over this bit by bit and explain a bit of our history, why we've made certain changes and what we're forecasting for the future. And looking for the future, we will be having a congregational meeting to go over a lot of the small issues, perhaps, of mission, vision, values, and establishing an action plan. This will be facilitated and led, and again, we are looking for lots of participation and input into this as we identify our plans for the future. Also factored into that will be the governance guidance team led by Gene Skillman. And they've been working hard to look at our structure and our procedures and making them more realistic to a congregation of our size. This review has not been done in the last 12 years. And we think we have changed a bit, and the way we work has changed, and how we relate to our community and the world is somewhat different. You will notice that we're talking about our return to in-person gathering, and the board has approved that we would have limited open doors on October the 3rd, but there will only be 5 guests that day. And they will be board members, and we will be following a very tight protocol just to make sure that we've got things in place. We are going to be limited as to the total numbers that we can have on board, but we thought we would start with 5 just to see how that was going to go. The severance option, AKA the hockey stick, really there is no update yet, but the United Property Resource Corporation, acting on our behalf, is working with the boys and girls to see how we might address the opportunity perhaps of acquiring that property. Once again, as I always say, I am available for discussion, questions, comments, and in the report, I have included my phone number and email. What we don't do is have that kind of conversation during announcements when we've got a full program at our gathering. This is not about church business. This is getting together and being inspired, and really looking forward to Scott's message this morning. And with that said, back to you, Scott. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Mike, very much, and Anita. And could we move now to Deb, please?
Sure. There's so much going on. I'm going to add to what's going on in that we have 2 studies coming up this fall. And the first, I'm going to turn to Scott to tell you a little bit about it, but it's in the context that Mike was just describing, actually, which is that we have been looking at our values as a bedrock for then looking at our mission and our vision. Who do we want to be? And then what do we want to do? How do we see ourselves being together in the next 5 years, let's say? What do we want to accomplish? So that's the work that we're going to be doing. And so we wanted the values to be that bedrock. And so Scott has been leading the group looking at our Vision Works document. And so I'm going to turn it to you, Scott, to talk about what you're going to be leading in terms of a little mini study on that.
Okay, next Sunday, and that has, I think it's already been touched on in the e-blast, but will be announced again. Next Sunday, just when the revision team, the Vision Works writing revision team, I thought they had retired, I pulled them back in, and the team is going to be presenting the revised Vision Works document in the morning perspectives. And there'll be some time for feedback and response in that. They're busting proud of the work and should be, because it was valuable time spent thinking deeply about these. So because they've had it, we thought it would be great to run a little opportunity for folks to come and dig in a bit deeper with the words, with the ideas in the document, to ask questions, to challenge it to anything. So next Sunday will be the presentation of it in the perspectives. And then the next 3 Wednesdays, and at the moment, I don't know the numbers. One's in September and then 2 is in October at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You're welcome to come on a Zoom. I wish it was in person, but we'll get there. Come on a Zoom, and we're going to take each of the 3 sections of the Vision Works. It's been revised to 3 sections instead of 5, and we'll explain that on Sunday. I think it will be a really meaningful discussion. You're welcome to just come and listen, or you're welcome to come and engage and reflect with us. And then also to challenge and say, I don't know what that means. I don't understand that. I don't think that represents us. You're welcome to say absolutely anything. And that will be taken into consideration. So next Sunday in the perspectives, and then Wednesday, September, October, and October, something. You can find it at 2:00.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so that should be good. That'll be, I think, from 1 to 2:30 on those afternoons. So all that information will be coming to you. The second opportunity comes out of the fact that the discovery of thousands of children's bodies that were buried by residential schools, and how that brought to the fore for many of us realization about the lack of knowledge about our history as a country and the lives and realities of the indigenous peoples of this land. So many people expressed a desire to learn more about that. And so we're going to be doing something a little bit different this time for this study. The Faculty of Native Studies at the University of Alberta has a course called Indigenous Canada. The instructors are Indigenous, and it's taught from an Indigenous perspective. Almost 400,000 people have taken it, and 13,000 people rated it and gave it a 4.8 out of 5. It's free, it's online, and these are some of the topics, just a sampling of what is covered. The significance of stories and storytelling in Indigenous societies, Indigenous worldviews and traditional ecological knowledge, pre-contact trading systems between Indigenous peoples, and then contact with Europeans and the fur trade, Indigenous and settler perspectives of treaties, what's distinctive about Indigenous legal traditions, the Indian Act, assimilation, teaching and learning in Indigenous communities, and then the development implementation of the residential school system and the intergenerational impacts, creation of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Indigenous concepts of gender and how colonization can be seen as a gendered project, social movements, Oak Crisis, I'll Know More, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, Indigenous art, music, writers, responses to colonization. So it's going to be really rich and covers a lot of ground. It is 12 weeks. So what we're going to do is do the first 6 weeks this fall after Scott's piece is done. So I think it's like the last week of October into the first week of December, and then we'll pick up the remaining 6 weeks in the start of the new year. It is beginner level, and it's, as I say, it's free, and each week there'll be videos that you watch, a couple of articles to read, and there's a quiz. You can quiz yourself. And then the idea is we'll do that individually in our homes. And then each week we'll gather for an hour and a half to talk about our responses to that material, what's shocked us, what surprised us, how we're feeling about it and reacting to it, what we can do about it. So that's the plan. It's different this time, as I say. So we're going to see how this goes and if we like it, but that's what we're doing this time around. As an aside, Dan Levy, really well-known Canadian actor, was in Schitt's Creek, and he took it this year and invited his millions of followers to join him, and worked with the professors of the course to hold discussions each week, and those are available on YouTube. So each week we can also, as additional interest, you can read his or watch his conversations with the professors. So that's the plan. I'm sorry it was long. I'm going to share with you a 90-second video about it from the university, and let me know if, oh, wait a second now. Here we go, optimize your video clip. Let me know if you can't see this or hear it.
Indigenous Canada is a unique online learning experience that emphasizes Indigenous perspectives and world
Uh-oh.
views. The collective intention of this course is to tell Canadian
Deb, I'm hearing it, but I'm seeing you.
perspective. It's a 12-module course that investigates issues important
Well, that's
for
not
understanding
good.
the past and current relationships between Indigenous.
If you like, Deb, send me the link in chat and I'll get it up, okay?
I think, you know what happened? I think when I put it to full screen, that's when it went wonky. But you definitely don't want to be looking at me while you're listening to that. Let me try this again here. I won't put it in full screen and it will probably be fine.
Indigenous Canada is a unique online learning experience that emphasizes Indigenous perspectives and worldviews. The collective intention of this course is to tell Canadian history from an Indigenous perspective. It's a 12-module course that investigates issues important for understanding the past and current relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous societies. Topics include Indigenous worldviews, fur trade, environmental impacts, legal systems and rights, political conflicts and alliances, political activism, and contemporary Indigenous life, art, and expressions. Faculty and staff at the Faculty of Native Studies at the University of Alberta developed the core vision of this course, and the rich and diverse content that emerged is due to the generosity of the many Indigenous authors, artists, elders, and knowledge keepers who gave their time to the project. We have so much to share with you. Come and engage with the perspectives of Indigenous peoples in our complex relationship with Canada in Indigenous Canada.
So there you have it. That's the plan. The information will be coming out in the newsletter that Kathleen puts together. It'll be in the e-blast. And then my plan is closer to the time, if people are struggling to sign up, I'm going to stay after a service on a Sunday and share my screen and show you. It's very simple. It's basically your email and you make a password and then you have your portal. But I'll stay on a Sunday afterwards, share my screen, show you how to sign up if anybody's having any trouble with that. So if you have any questions, you can always email me or contact through the office and they'll send it to me. And hopefully we'll see you in the course together. And that's it. I'll turn it back to Scott.
Thank you, Deb. Really, really good opportunities to learn together. I always say this, that I would never have been as sensitive to Indigenous issues if it weren't for West Hill's emphasis on it. And everyone who's been a part of that, some are no longer with us. But it's been, I think I mentioned to you, I was at a social work annual meeting of the registered social workers at college. And they put the 95 calls to action on the screen. It was about, I think about 1,500 social workers sitting there. That's quite a lot of social workers in one room. But they asked how many were familiar with these, and maybe out of 1,500, honestly, there weren't 7 or 8 of us that put our hands up. And I put my hand up only because of West Hill bringing that to me. I might have heard of it, but it just was on the news, I guess. And so I was so grateful. And I wanted to sort of put my hand up and say, it's not just great me here, it's because of the community I belong to and the emphasis it gives these issues. And ever since, you sort of can't go back in your head and your heart. You can forget for a while, but you can't go back. And we shouldn't at all go back. So is there anyone else that has an update, an announcement of something to do with a committee they're on or anything at all? We've heard from Mike, we've heard from Anita, we've heard from Deb. Anyone else at all? Okay, the VisionWorks revision is organized under the same three headings as we always focus on. And why they're this important is, first of all, because they're short. and succinct. And second of all, because they kind of grasp the idea, and we just review this each time. And some of you may think, oh, that again. But there are always new people. And I always need reminding that this is what we gather around. And I'll just do it simply in this, we focus on it more later, but we find our ideas of what is true, of what is human, what is the world, what is the cosmos, what is life. We find that in life, not a particular book, many books, not a particular scientific exploration, but any of them, not a particular ideology, anything. We look at everything and anything to get an idea of what life is. And the biggest thing that we keep getting is that whatever we do, we can't get away from the fact that life is interconnected, that we have an impact on life, and it has an impact on us. In Nova Scotia, we caught the tail end of Hurricane Ida, and we lost some power for a bit, and we had wind and rain. But we had nothing like New Jersey and New York, the Atlantic side, and then going right down to the south, and they're peltered by it. We're affected by life with no control whatsoever. We certainly have had some control in how we care for our environment, and it is affecting us as well. So we're in that one too. But we are affected by life, and I am affected by human choices all over the place. I'm affected by your choices. I'm affected by your choice to be here. I'm delighted you are here. So I see you have affected me with your choice to be here. But also your choices at home affect us. Our choices affect Africa. Our choices affect everything. So interconnections. And then when we see that, many people, many folks through history have said, oh, good, then I can get whatever I want out of it because I can affect people for ill. And we all do tiny bits of this without even knowing sometimes. But the idea is, how do we want to live in this interconnected web? And we keep trying to choose and prioritize love, compassion, justice, kindness, integrity, sacrificing much of what we might want for the greater good. These are big and loud and hard calls, but we give them to ourselves. We didn't get them from a particular person, a tradition, we got them from life. And then we come together to get better at it, and we grow. And I hope we always are saying, I want next year to be a more compassionate person than I was this year, or I want to extend my compassion farther than I did before, all within reason. And again, and we keep emphasizing this because I belonged to an organization, a religious organization that very much emphasized very often to put yourself last. Everybody else was more important, and of course the deity they worship was more important. And we've kind of reversed that here to say that what we focus on is self, others, and the planet. Not self to the exclusion of others, but there's lots you need to do for yourself, because no one's responsible for you but you. And to take care of you, to take care of your growth, to take care of your focus, to take care of your health is number one. And if you're well, that's a little easier. And if you're not well, that's really hard. And we want to be part of that with you. So grounded and guided and growing is something we remind ourselves about. And so from that, we enter into the experience of our community together, and we share. And the first thing we do, and I'm just going to ask if there's anyone just wants to come on briefly with a sentence or two or a phrase or a name. What we do is we sink into those needs in the world, remembering. And I'm sure there's some of you that can barely look at the news anymore. It's so overwhelming in its gravity, in its gravitas of what's troubling the world. And that's just think politically, think socially, think and then think environmentally. It's enormous. And so part of being together is to say we need to bear that together. And so we never want it to be seeming trite that we're focusing and caring about the troubles, the difficulties, the challenges in the world. But we do it in this little way, is just to name a couple of the places, the geographic places or the peoples, the ethnicities that are in trials for life. And so just come off your Zoom for a moment, your camera. Nope, your microphone for a moment and mention a place or a person that's in
Afghanistan.
that's all.
The doctors and the nurses in Alberta who are struggling in a terrible health crisis.
All of Canada tomorrow.
Yes.
Please vote.
If you thought a couple minutes, Reed, if you could, but I'm waiting for a fourth.
Indigenous peoples that are suffering with lack of clean water, housing, proper education.
Right. So we take it in our hearts, and within our realm of what are they? A lot of
Next dog in is Lobo, a Siberian Husky, handled by Alan Davis from Penn Argyl, Pennsylvania.
that's not me talking there. So there we go. It sounded good, but it wasn't me. The idea of taking in our sphere of influence. What is your sphere of influence? And we always want to push that, but we don't want to overestimate what our sphere of influence is. But in our sphere of influence, we together say that these matters and all the matters you're going to bump into this week on the news and in your own neighborhood, they matter. And so we say together, in this our time of need, may love abound. There's a commitment in that sort of statement. And so now we open it up to, and I'm delighted to be here again and hear from any of you that want to share a celebration, a milestone, an accomplishment, or a burden, a sadness, a fear, a worry. Absolutely anything matters because you matter. We don't have magic wands here. We don't have magic promises, but we do have care. And if you need it, pull on a string here and it will come from us in any way that we can. So if there's anyone that wants to give us an update or a celebration, please do.
Hi,
Ruth, you're on?
June and I, my husband, we went up and we had a wonderful opportunity to visit with Dorothy Hurley on Monday. And it was just so wonderful to see her after all this time. She, I guess as most people know, she suffers from dementia, but she has her moments. But it was interesting. She did recognize us, but couldn't call us by name, but she did recognize our faces. She wonders why she isn't going to church. That was definitely came through. But the people in the home, normally you're only allowed 1 hour's visit, and they were very generous. They knew we'd come up from Toronto, and they didn't, we were there for almost 2 hours, which was wonderful to be able to spend that really good time with her. So, in this abundant blessing.
Share the joy.
And in Dorothy's time of need, she misses us all so desperately. May love abound.
They love abound.
They love
I'll just jump in. I got you, Mel. I'll just jump in for a second here. I'm working with quite a number of people right now at work who are related to folks with dementia of some sort. And I just want to say, as a group, and when we all have experience in some way, shape, or form with that, or most of us do, it is a haunting, tragic, challenging for the person themselves. Depending on their level of awareness with it. We have people here at our work that it's hard to tell that they're aware of anything at all. It has progressed so much. But then in the middle section, the stress of that. And so for our dear Dorothy and for others that we know in our community that struggle with that, when someone looks at someone they recognize but can't pull the name. Now we all have times of forgetting, but this is not that. This is a more profound blank. To live with blanks where there was fullness and color and richness before is a tragic thing. And then, of course, for the people living with it, I've seen people push to the extreme of their patience, of their kindness, of their energy, of their health, because they're caring for somebody with some levels of Alzheimer's. And it doesn't even end when someone is admitted to a facility, because there's also the relationship that maybe stops being the police and the doctor and the lawyer and all that, but still is the family member. And I've seen people with various levels of dementia lash out at their family member continually for putting them there or for not taking them home. Take me home. It is a really huge challenge. And so when we talked about the Indigenous issues, I was thinking of Dorothy, because she's cared about that so much. And so for all those that are struggling with their precious thing called their mind changing, we haven't even touched mental illness here, but cognitive impairment of some sort, for all those struggling with it, for all those loving and caring for those who are struggling with it, I just want to add an extra oomph of, in this our time of need. May love abound. If any of you are struggling with that in any way, let us know. And if it's a challenge with your partners or family members, let us know as well. Okay, has anyone else got something to share? Mel, I saw Mel's hand there.
Yes, I would like to tell everybody about our very dear friend Jean, who actually a week ago today took herself to the hospital by using her little help button that she has been wearing. She said, I was wearing that, so I thought I better use it because I wasn't feeling very good. Anyway, she went to the hospital last Sunday and they checked her over and decided that she was okay to go back home, but have an appointment on Monday. So her daughter took her home Monday with an appointment at the doctor's for Tuesday. The doctor called the ambulance immediately because Jean has pneumonia and a renal infection. So Jean is in the hospital, and I spoke with her on Friday, and she said, well, tell everybody on Sunday morning I'm still kicking. and actually, I think the antibiotics she's been getting are working for her because she's feeling much better. However, that's a big thing for somebody at 101 to have pneumonia and a renal infection. Anyway, so she said to say hello to everybody. And I wanted to just tell you one thing that she made a point of mentioning to me. She said, Mel, I am so grateful for all the people who are not necessarily Canadian born, but have come to Canada that are working in the medical field, and they're taking wonderful care of me. So in this abundant blessing, we share
the joy. I was thinking when I first heard about Jean being in the hospital, second time, I thought, really, if you were her roommate and you were feeling sorry for yourself at all, I think having a roommate of Jean Hamill, and if you found out her age and how she's still kicking, I think would help lift your spirits or make you very embarrassed or something. But I thought of being Jean's roommate would be quite a privilege. Unless she's in, of course, a private room, but I'm sure she's relating with the staff, and that she's thinking of them in that way is fabulous.
Actually, she also said, I spent at least a night and a day in emergency because they didn't have beds. And she said, I was very disappointed when they moved me out of emergency because it was so interesting, all the things that were going on down there. Now I'm in a room all by myself and it's boring. So there you go.
If anyone had any doubt that that was Jean Hamill that said that, you by listening to that, you would know that was very Jean. Yeah. Thanks, Mel, for that. Anyone else about any of our wider family? Velda keeps us up to date with several people on our wellness meetings on Tuesdays. Eleanor Camage is doing well, and we're thinking of folks that we don't see as much. And if you have any news of them, please share with it. Velda.
I talked to Arlene Kelly the other day, and she still has an upbeat attitude. But I think she is suffering some pain. She has not started her chemo treatments yet. That's down the line quite a ways, I think. Maybe because of COVID, but she didn't say. But she's quite cheerful when I talk to her. I also talked to Martha O'Neill, and she's doing fine.
Thank you, Velda. I appreciate all the connections you make with people. And for those of you that are from farther away, these are just names to you. I hope when you're hearing them and you're thinking of people that are near and dear to you, these are people near and dear to us, so they're near and dear to you too. You may not know them, but this is a time for caring for all those that aren't with us or people that are. So we welcome you into that, even if the names are not known. Maybe if you've heard them a couple times, at least it rings a bell, but please feel part of that. Anyone else? I don't want to miss anybody. Chris. As soon as you unmute. Yeah.
As soon as I unmute, I would like to mention how encouraged and delighted I am at the news of the first new drug for many years to treat Alzheimer's, targeted at the amyloid and the plaques that build up in the brain, which is now, I gather, licensed for use in America. Hasn't yet been approved for the UK, but we hope will be very soon. This is great news. And as Scott knows, my late wife had Alzheimer's, and I lived with that for many years. And the news that now, for the first time for ages, there's a new drug and a lot more possible ones on the way, I gather, as well, is great news. And it won't probably help those who have the condition now, but in the future, it's going to make a world of difference, I'm sure. So for this abundant blessing,
we share
the joy.
We share the joy. And for all the researchers that made bits and pieces of that happen, was it not for Edison, I think, said that, you see the successes, but there's been 400 failures, which were all part of the learning.
Yeah,
and so all that goes in together to be a lot of work that brings us a final result, like a vaccine or
nothing to do with Alzheimer's, but I was fascinated to learn yesterday that this year we celebrate 100 years since the discovery of insulin for treating diabetes.
Wow.
Which I was lucky enough to be born after. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here now.
Thank you, Chris. I wonder, actually, when I think about it, how many of us would say that because of our conditions, and I'm certainly one of them, we may not be here now if we weren't born when we were born. That could be quite a number of us. It doesn't have to be a life-threatening thing now, but it was back then. And it depends on how far back your back then is, of course. But I know with me, I grew up with 100 allergies and 100, it was asthma and bronchitis and real weakness and everything. I remember my mom telling me, I don't remember this at all, but the doctor had told my mom that I would never be normal, and that has been interpreted various ways. But the idea of that, it was he said my mom had to be my detective, because this was in the day before I had so many food allergies, and fairly serious. They're not now, but and that they didn't print things on bottles like they do now. When you see those lists of ingredients and then the caveat may contain, that wasn't on bottles when I was growing up. So my mom had to be very careful with me, and there were some problems. I had my own cookie jar, my own stuff to potlucks. Well, no, that's what you do with potlucks. I mean, particularly. So in that, my mom really was a heroic mom at the time, as many were, and evidently I won the first Sunday school picnic race I ever raced in. I won, and I found out later that I was first place and the other person running was second place, and that was all that was running. But it was a triumph. I didn't look behind me, you see, so I thought I just won a race, which was remarkable because I could breathe after it, and I spent many nights struggling to breathe, and now I don't. So with all of you that would have had a very different childhood if you didn't have the things that were around then, and the things that Mike would have prescribed for people that he couldn't have 25, well, even 10 years ago, for goodness sake. So there's all sorts of advances, and we're grateful for every one of them that's kept you people here on the screen today. And some of them aren't working as well as you'd like. And we, kind of feel for you on that too. I myself as well. Anyway, any other sharing?
Scott, this is a message for you.
Yes.
There's an expression, feast or famine. It's Louise, and we're just all really happy to have a feast. But having you back, you were wondering if you're back too much, but no, we're all happy to have you back.
Oh.
And Don Francis has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's lovely to be back. I often say that if you have to return to a workplace, like where I work, this is the workplace to return to. And if you have to return to a community after a vacation, this is the community I wish to return to. So, and they never felt far away from you anyway. But thank you. So Don, I don't see Don on my screen, but Don Francis?
Well, I'm here.
I believe that. Oh, there you are.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to share that our two oldest grandchildren have just recently reached the age of majority, and both of them have voted in the advance polls.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So I thought that was great news.
You're responsible for adding responsible citizens to the world. Thank you for that.
Very small part.
It counts, yes. And anyway, thank you for noticing. When Louise, anyone that notices a hand up or a little yellow thing, please let me know, because I don't see everybody at the same time, which is true in life as well, but it's certainly prohibitive on a Zoom screen. Okay, so now we mentioned, and I'm just going to ask a couple of you to just throw in the name of a person, an organization, a group that's doing darn good stuff in the middle of darn very difficult challenges, just so we honor them and remember them. And I love when I hear about something I'd never heard before, because I cheer that on. When Greta and I watch a particular program that holds up, whether it's a television series or a movie that holds up the values in a beautiful way that the characters struggle and try to overcome, when the program's finished, I always look at the credits and say, thank you, that there are still human beings that think that message is important, and that they thought that many people would be watching it, that it got produced. And so we're grateful for all the goodness that is done. So please name a person, organization, or anything, just to celebrate that this morning with us together.
Aldersbridge Communities.
There you go.
Rabbi Outside the Box.
Horizons of Friendship, working in Central America.
The Scott Mission.
To drink that before it separates.
And for these and for everyone you're going to read about or hear about or meet in your grocery store, whoever they are, whatever they are, and they're you too. So in this abundant blessing, we share the
joy
and cheer them on as well. And so now we turn to a whack of sunflowers, which are adorning our words of commitment still. I bought a whole bunch of sunflowers in Nova Scotia, put them in the room, and they just shine. They just glow and shine. So let's, you're welcome to mute now. You're welcome to unmute, and we'll say together the words of commitment. We're just adding a little water to the sunflowers at the moment, and it will be there shortly.
Hi, Scott. I noticed that I had been made host, so I texted Peter, and he's not here unless he has just come back.
Okay.
So I don't have the words of commitment.
I do. I believe I do right here on my screen here. So
are you a co-host? I can make you a co-host.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to read them, and we can read together, and I'll be the best at it.
Oh, Peter says almost here.
He's almost here. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Well, he said Zoom went non-responsive and he had to reboot his PC. So I don't know.
Oh my goodness. He had to reboot his PC. Would you have known what that meant 20 years ago?
Yes.
Oh, Anita's showing off there. You would have known, Anita, I see.
Yes, I had a job in that 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago.
Oh, you're an expert. Well, I didn't know what it meant.
No, lost it all now.
Anyway, we can go ahead. I don't know how long he'll
Okay,
be.
I can, I've got the PowerPoint here, so I will lead them, and you're welcome to join in from memory if you like. Okay.
There's no sunflowers.
There's no sunflowers.
There's no sunflowers.
Okay, I'm looking at beautiful sunflowers, but
Oh, Peter Thomas is in the waiting room.
oh,
Here
will
he
someone let him
comes.
in?
I
Let
did.
him in. I'm
Wondering
gonna-
why I had been made the host all of a sudden.
I don't know. Maybe he did it as he exited. I want to say, those of you that come on, we put a lot of time into organizing and working on every single Sunday morning background organization and time, and but things go wrong. You're so patient. I appreciate that. Now maybe you aren't, and you're just trying to look patient, which is very good. It's a good exercise. It's good to develop that quality. But I appreciate that, because there's some things that are just beyond our control, and that was one of them. So Peter, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. The words of commitment, if you could. Welcome back, by the way.
Deb, can you make me host, please, or co-host?
Yes, I'm trying to find you. There you are. I got you.
Thanks for your help, Deb.
There we go.
Are you seeing that?
Seeing your yes, there we go. Look at that. Hey, thank you, Peter.
You can go
Struggling
now.
against the odds. All right, here we go. The earth
is my home,
the world,
and the world my family.
As I live
As
every
I live
day.
every day, I want to be a channel
for peace.
May I bring love
where there is hatred,
healing
where there is hurt,
joy
where there is sadness, and hope there is fear.
Pray that I may
I
always
pray that I may always try to understand and comfort other people, as well as seek comfort from them.
wherever
possible, may I choose to bring light in the darkness, to help in time of need, and a caring, honest friend. And may justice, kindness, and peace flow from my heart forever.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Peter, very much. And back we go to us. I've been grateful to Deb for her help so far, and I've also asked her to pinch hit a bit with the reading. Ingrid, Walter was showing us the words. I'm not sure why he was doing that. Why were you doing that, Walter?
Because if it's not something memorized, it's handy for me to see it written down. I have that available every Sunday morning.
Okay, Walter's just confessed that he cheats, and that's okay. It's okay that he does. We'll let him do that. Yes, of course. And I wanted to say really quickly, if some of those words don't work for you, just don't say them. I mean, some people don't say the I pray. I often say at work, I pray that you listen to, it's a word, but I don't actually pray in the traditional sense. But if that word doesn't work for you, just don't say it. There's no requirement at all. You can engage with the parts that fit for you. So please know that. Okay, the reading, I'm going to ask Deb to read it. I'll just read the first part, Deb, just to explain it. I came across this person I'd never heard of, and you probably have, named Jesse Ventura. He there you go. And this is because we put quotes on because of the quotes themselves, and the lives of the people behind them aren't necessarily being sanctioned by that. But I wanted to say that what I discovered about this person was quite a list of roles: an American politician, author, actor, radio and television talk show host on the news program The World According to Jesse, United States Navy SEAL veteran, former professional wrestler, visiting fellow professor at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government, a mayor, and the 38th governor of the state of Minnesota. And over the years, he has started up with the Reform Party in the States, then moved to Green, and then to Independent. And it's what he says about voting that I want to emphasize today. So I'm going to ask Deb if she would read the first and second reading.
Sure. The first reading shares a somewhat humorous hypothetical situation, a thought experiment. I have an idea about voting. How about on every ballot, we include none of the above? People may laugh at that, but what that is a vote of no confidence in your government. And I'm willing to bet that in some elections, none of the above would win. Imagine if you won the election, but lost to none of the above. Wouldn't that make you rethink your positions? The second reading shows what Ventura feels about the act of voting. Remember something, if you will, about voting. Voting is not a horse race. You're not going there thinking, gee, I got to pick the winner so I can brag to my friends. Oh, I picked so-and-so and he won. Voting is voting your heart and voting your conscience. And when you've done that, don't ever, ever let a Democrat or Republican tell you that you've wasted your vote. Because the fact is, if you don't vote your heart and conscience, then you have wasted your vote.
Thank you, Deb. And then I'll just introduce this next little proclamation Ventura made in his home state. He tried to grapple with the divisiveness of race and gender and ethnicity. And so he decided that he would emphasize one of the words from the American Pledge of Allegiance and made this what he called the Indivisible Day proclamation in 2002. And I'm going to ask Deb if she would read that proclamation to us.
Whereas the unique features of this nation at its foundation was its establishment of a secular constitution that separated government from religion, something never done before. And whereas our secular constitution has enabled people of all worldviews to coexist in harmony, undivided by sectarian strife. And whereas President James Madison made clear the importance of maintaining this harmony when he said, quote, "The purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the endless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries," end quote. And whereas the diversity of our people requires mutual respect and equal protection for all our citizens, including minority groups, if we are to remain one nation, indivisible. And whereas it is the unfettered diversity of ideas and worldviews that have made our nation the strongest and most productive in the world. And whereas eternal vigilance must be maintained to guard against those who seek to stifle ideas, establish a narrow orthodoxy, and divide our nation along arbitrary lines of race, ethnicity, and religious belief or non-belief. Now, therefore, I, Jesse Ventura, Governor of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim that Thursday, July the 4th, 2002, shall be observed as Indivisible Day in the state of Minnesota. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
If we walk in its light. Again, a controversial figure, no doubt, but I thought those words were important and challenging and thought-provoking, and so we include them and walk in the light of what wisdom we can draw from them. So I'm going to ask Peter now to start the power presentation. I thought it was very apt and very tricky to approach the topic of vote today, because, and I think I put it in the e-blast, very much, we in the institution of church have a commitment to be non-partisan. And I think that's a big calling and a really important calling. I have my own political views, you have your own political views. And in a discussion after with coffee, anyone is welcome to share their views of any sort at all. But we try in our sharing time, we try in all our times to stay away from this gathering being a place where particular politicians or particular platforms or parties are discussed or are promoted or denigrated. And so that we keep that very, very sacred, so that everyone from any political ilk feels comfortable gathering wisdom and gathering strength for the very act of being a political person. And I read a quote the other day, says, if you think if you don't pay attention to politics, remember, politics pays attention to you, because the things that are chosen will affect you. So I like that. If you think you don't pay attention to politics, politics pays attention to you. And so I want to take the word vote, but I want to make it much more than an election type vote. So come with me on a bit of history and a bit of some delightful photographs. And I'll try to describe what's on them very briefly for those of you that are on phone and not on screen. That can't see. So Peter, if you could start that PowerPoint there.
You mean the first O Canada?
That's exactly what I mean. That was Peter being very diplomatic, saying, Scott, I think you forgot that. This is a beautiful rendition of O Canada by the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. If you could stop it when it actually stops, Peter, I think it runs on a little past that, but please think of your country, think of all that matters in your country when you're listening to this. Well, I hope you're a proud Canadian there. That was so rich. Those of you that hear differences in chord structure. There were so many times in that where they did a different chord under the melody, particularly during the end. I nearly jumped out of my seat at home when I first heard it. Just, it wasn't a dominant seventh. It was just beautiful and surprising. So thank you for that Edmonton Symphony Orchestra and all those that, so if that's not your country, I'm sure you're wishing it was when you heard that. Hi, Karen, I see your nod there, and others. So now I'm going to take you on a little trip into history. If you could start that PowerPoint. Thank you, Peter, for your help in that. I appreciate that. So the word vote is a noun, a vote, and the word vote is a verb, to vote. And we're going to talk about that in its widest possible sense. Peter, I'm really going to go through these rapidly. So next slide, a little history about voting. And the first slide you're going to see is a bunch of broken pottery. And in ancient Greece, in Athenian culture, you voted in the style called negative voting. You voted to oust someone. You voted to get rid of a politician, not to vote one in. And you mark these little pieces of pottery with who you thought should go. And the words for these pottery is ostraka. And if you can put that together quicker than I did, our word ostracize comes from this very idea, to ostracize someone, to kick them out, to get them out, to leave them alone, to not have anything to do with them, on these little pieces of ostraka pottery. Sorry. The next slide shows Themistocles, who is one of the first non-aristocratic politicians in Greece, being ousted, poor fella, in 492 BCE. And the next slide is Hippocrates, who Mike could probably recite the oath, and those of you in the medical profession, he's being ousted on this piece of pottery. And they found these ostraka, which is amazing. The next idea was in Athens, Venice. I'm sorry, Venice. You see the picture of the canal there. In Venice, you voted by 6,000s. If 6,000 people got the vote, they were in, and if they didn't, nobody got in. And that was another way of eliminating people. And the next slide is the idea of the right to vote, which has been a series of amending the way we run our countries, our world, our organizations, our families. Amending the right to vote. Next slide. The first thing we're going to look at is in the United States of America, how they amended the vote for color. And the first, I'm not doing this as a chronologically correct history. I'm just bringing out different ideas to add the idea that being able to vote, being able to choose, being able to think about what this means didn't come easily for anyone. And so I'm emphasizing if you're familiar with the history, that in 1862, Abraham Lincoln, of course, proclaimed the Emancipation Proclamation, whereby no slavery was allowed, and people will do no acts or actions to repress any such person that formerly was a slave in any effort they make for their actual freedom. And so that was a proclamation, and you know very well how that didn't change the world completely. It didn't even formally abolish it in many states. There were amendments and amendments and amendments that came after that. Civil Rights Act in 1866 tried to guarantee citizenship without regard to race, color, or previous condition of slavery or involuntary servitude, but the different states bucked it and didn't want to. One leader in one of the states, and I'm not picking on anything in particular, objected to some of those measures because he thought it discriminated in favor of African Americans and against whites, which was hardly the case at the time. But the fear of these people that didn't vote before are going to affect things, and we have to circle the wagons and protect our power, is what usually it's been about. Then they made more and more amendments. The next slide is a picture, and if you can read that, I'm going to go closer and read it myself. This is the kind of paper that was put up. Van Buren in favor of Negroes voting and opposed to the poor white man's enjoying this inestimable privilege. And so it's always been about privilege and power, and the clauses were put in to say, oh no, not all Black people, not all this. That there was the next slide is the picture of the proclamation, which sounds and looks official and strong. But what happened was the votes to ratify different parts of it and different interpretations of it. One of the votes was 144 to 44, with 35 people not voting. And I wonder how Black people live next to those people that voted to restrict it even more. The next picture is a Thomas Nast cartoon with, if you can see, it's hard to see, I know, but this is a picture of everyone sitting at the table, happily eating supper together, Blacks, whites, Asians, all sorts of things. But, and the next picture is a beautiful, and I won't go into the detail, although the detail's fabulous in these pictures. This is what the governing people, the people in power, were saying. We've done a great, look at our parade. We're making a parade down the streets of our country to say that we have ratified this wonderful freedom for Black people. And then the next picture is, I'm sorry, that's the Thomas Nast cartoon. The other was just a picture. This is a cartoon to say, not so, people, not so. And you'll see in the cartoon there, there's a pseudo heraldic sort of shield there, portrayed by a Black family between, and on the left picture in that shield is a picture of a lynching, and on the right, a picture of a burning schoolhouse. And the caption says that it's even worse than slavery. They knew slavery, but what they went into, and you'll see on the right-hand side, the objection to whites at all with the Ku Klux Klan. And so this cartoon, and as so often our journalists and our commentators and our comedians say, this is really how it is right now. You've got your law, but it's not happening. The next picture is another celebratory picture of promoting Frederick Douglass, promoting senators that promoted the equality of the racism, joyous pictures. The next picture is a picture of a person voting, a Black person voting, and that was promoted. You see, we're letting Black people vote, and still, even after a picture like this, the right was interpreted very narrowly by some, very narrowly indeed. Things like it didn't include that if you were illiterate, you got to understand the voting or the ballot or whatever. And in every way, some people still tried to curve out certain kinds of people from having the vote. The law was passed that they were to be protected, that Black people were to be protected at the polling stations, and the KKK did its best to not support that, and to still go on with horrible crimes, all based on your color. You couldn't vote. You couldn't have a decision, make a decision if you were that color. And the next slide is just sadly a picture of President Johnson bringing in a final piece of law that curved it in. And those of you who remember President Johnson, that's not very long ago. The next picture is a man in Africa holding out his ballot for the first time and rejoicing that his color in his country can vote. And the next picture is very familiar if you've seen this one before. Well, of course, it's familiar if you've seen it before, but a familiar person. This is Mandela voting for the very first time with a great big smile on his face. So that's the right to vote, the amending of an idea of that you get to choose who governs you, or you get to have a voice in who governs you by not by exclusion by race. And the next one, we're going to go real fast through these pictures. They're incredible pictures. If you Google this topic, you'll find the most wonderful pictures. These are all on common rights. So the right to vote for gender. Now, the next slide is a quote by Grover Cleveland, the president at the time. Sensible and responsible women do not want to vote. The relative positions to be assumed by man and woman in the working out of our civilization were assigned long ago by a higher intelligence than ours. Sensible women and responsible women do not want to vote. He's happened to know this for some reason. And I just want to add a little thing when we do our grounded in life. We find out about life not by searching long ago to a higher intelligence that was written down by someone or other to say who gets to be considered human. And so the women protested, and the next slide is a declaration from a group of women saying, resolved, it is against the spirit of our Constitution that the right of citizens of the state of New York to vote should be denied or abridged on account of sex. We therefore heartily endorse the concurrent resolution now before the legislature to amend the Constitution by striking out the word male from Section 1, Article 2, and we earnestly urge the members of the legislature to support this resolution. So you'll see there a picture of a group of women that banded together to do these things. There's their president, and I'm going quickly through these. There's that proclamation I just read. Thank you. And then they decided they have a march. They were going to have a march. So the next slide shows the announcement in the papers that there's going to be a march, and there's your invitation to come to the march. The next slides show the letters written. And the reason I put these here is we're just looking at the amount of work and care that went into getting something that we consider so ordinary that all of you that are on screen that are identify as women can vote. And the next slide is the minutes from a meeting of men who were in favor of equal franchise. And now we're just going to scroll through. I just want you to look at the people in these slides and imagine them if you can't see them. These are people, the next slide, Peter, and just let's keep going through these slides. There's a group of people in a car going to the march. The next picture is women's had an essay contest before the march started. Here's an announcement of the, next is the announcement of the parade. Next is a car coming to the parade, festooned with flowers. And the next is the women marching down the street with their parasols. The next is they're bringing some beautiful vinery. The next is turning a corner with their banners. The next is some men marching with them, which I think is probably one of the more beautiful slides. And the next is more news people coming around taking pictures. And now the next one, we start to see the police coming. And the next is the actual arrests beginning. And let's keep going through the next slide there, Peter, and the next, more arrests taking place. Glowering looks on a policeman's face for these rabble-rousing women to do what they want. The next picture is them being taken to jail. And after some time and some outcry, we see them leaving jail. Next picture is a suffrage bus. They called it a suffrage bus. And the next is a picture of one of the women leading a talk from the bus. And the next is another picture of a monster mass meeting. I love the wording, as it was. And here's a group. The next is a group of people arriving for that hike, that march. And the next is the picture of horseback. I'm going through these quickly. Here's the people beginning the march. They're at the starting line, and the men and women are there. The police are holding the line, but they're going to march. And the next are some pictures of this march gathering. Incredible courage, incredible effort gone into this. The next picture is just a mass of people walking for women's right. Then you see a poster that's a map of the states of where they felt their success was be. A lovely poster. The next picture is a lovely poster saying, "What's sauce for the gander is sauce for the goose." Then another picture next is the kind of women in their professions that don't get the vote, and this is a very sarcastic one. The kind of men that do get the vote despite their unsavory professions. The next one just says that many women were against the women's rights to vote. And this is a woman trying to sweep out other women that are coming in for the vote. Really quickly, we have a woman here. The next picture is a picture of a woman, and the title is Undaunted. Undaunted. And over to England, for those of you, next is a picture of Christabel and Emmeline Pankhurst sitting on their porch in a roof garden to get away from the police, which in the next picture are down below them, trying to find them and arrest them again. The next picture is a picture and then engraving of the courage and the what they went through to get this vote. The next is a picture that Greta loves this one very much. Well-behaved women rarely make history. And Peter, I'm going to go right to the end now. I had some work on Nellie McClung, and you can look her up, but I'm going to go right to the picture that says steward. Can you see those badges, Peter? The red and green badges. They say steward, steward, and four of them, I believe. You may be having some internet. There we go. The word steward. If you've been in church a long time, you would have come to the idea of a stewardship committee or steward. And steward means to manage the resources that are in your control well and responsibly. And so I go now to these words that we're going to look at. And the first, the idea of voting, the next slide, Peter, to vote, as the Ventura quote said, with heart and conscience for self, others, and the planet. And that doesn't just mean tomorrow. It does mean tomorrow in an enormous way, but it means much more than that. The next slide has the word vow in it. And that's a word that's related to the idea of voting, very much so. And it has the idea of making a formal choice for something, a formal opinion made official. The Hebrew word for vote also has the word for finger, for pointing. So voting is saying, I'm for that. I'm about that. I value that. I cherish that. And I want to be public about it. Now, there can be a private ballot as well, and you can make that known if you wish. So there's private voting and there's public voting. But the idea of pointing to it, the other Hebrew root has the word of coloring it or painting something. I want to make a mark on this. That's why I vote. The word vow in the next slide, the idea of vow is to make back to vow, Peter, sorry. Just back one slide, right? The idea of vow, meaning I solemnly promise to do something. Do we break some of our vows and our promises? Yes. But the idea is to solemnly say, I'm for this. I want to do this. I want to make this promise, and I'll make it public. And I want to. The knights of old would make vows to serve their master, their king, their master. The idea of vowing, especially the idea of solemn, and that's not a religious word necessarily. It's just the idea that it's that serious. You're saying, I want this. I want this. I want to do this compassionate thing or this just thing. The song, I vow to thee, my country, that I will do these things. The next idea word is devote. And this is a collection of words that are related to voting. So the next slide is devote or devotion or devout or a devotee of something. And of course it came often used in religious senses, but also to set apart something in your life, to say, I devote myself to, I give myself to this. My heart is moving me to be this way. And I will give up some things to be dedicated to something else. I will give up. I will devote my energy, my time, my finances to something. And as I'm using these words, when you're thinking of the word vote, it's that idea of claiming or choosing or saying, so what do we devote ourselves to? And when we talk about our values, these words come pounding in at us. They're not just words on a page. There's something that we can choose to devote ourselves to. And I love that idea, that to devote, the devotion that I have to something, which flags and stumbles. And I hope right now you're working on something in your life that you're not fond of in yourself. And you want to devote yourself to improving that. One of the words for devotion was mental consecration. I love that, mental consecration. And of course, there's rededicating yourself. I've flagged in that, but I really do want that. And to be devout about it is a great non-religious way of using that. You can use it religiously too. The next word is commit. And we use this a lot. Next slide. Commit, the idea of commitment, or consecrating it seems to be a religious word, but you can use it to consecrate yourself to this thing. I consider this sacred. I consider this holy. I will commit myself. Now, committing is more than just saying I vow or I vote. Committing means I intend to put myself into this, to pledge myself to this. I want to be part of this. So when we think of the word voting, you're saying, this is what I choose, and this is what I commit to. I commit my life or this section of my time to this very just cause, to speak in such a way, to act in such a way that I am committed. Or consecrated is really a very big word to say. I consecrate. I don't want to fall down in this, so I want to keep it as pure and important as possible. And then the next idea is dedicate. To dedicate. One of the definitions is to set apart and consecrate to some purpose one believes is wholly worthy of one's time and effort, finances, energy, and then therefore to be dedicated to. And dedication, I mean, that's where you look at your time, you look at yourself, you look at your health, you say, what part of me can I dedicate to these values? It can be all sorts of values, but altogether, even to just the word justice. But what can I do to dedicate myself? And when you think of the people that have struggled, and when the first we saw to amend the right to choose for color, to amend the right to choose for gender, and we have this amazing privilege. The last slide, Peter, the next slide is, I just put them all those thoughts together about voting, that taking Ventura's quote to vote with your heart and your conscience, but that's to be dedicated, to commit yourself to things with heart and conscience, and then it becomes part of your character. It becomes you, and like I say, when I'm delivering this message, please know I look at myself and think, oh my goodness. I say those words, but I want to be living them more. And so I took the idea to put the quotes and that idea of tomorrow voting, but more than that, just what we vote on in life. Who do you vote for in life? Not for political simply, but who do you vote for as in your support, as in your dedication to, as in your commitment to, as in you consecrate part of you to help that situation. And we again, I mentioned in the earlier part, we mentioned that are you dedicated to yourself? Do you consecrate time for caring for yourself, for physical caring for yourself, for mental caring for yourself, for philosophical caring for yourself, to your ideas, your ideology, how you educate yourself, how you inform yourself? Are you dedicated to building that self of yours with your vote? Are you voting for you? Are you voting for you? And then we talk about others, and that's the people that you rub shoulders with all the time, which are sometimes the harder ones to love than those people far away, but really shouldn't be because they're all people. But those others in your life that you dedicate your time, your energy to them while taking care of self, this balance, and then others will never meet. How do we commit? How do we dedicate ourselves to being a human being that shows by our choices that those people matter? That those people matter. And that's huge. It's daunting. We can't do it all. We can do little bits, and that's the idea of self and others. And then the planet. It's an aching planet. We live on an aching home, and it needs repair. It needs repair now and yesterday and all that. And so how do we vote with heart and conscience, not just for political leaders, but for organizations that are trying hard to reverse things and to make a better place for people to live, for species going extinct to live, and so that idea of voting. So I'm going to end there, Peter, because of the time, but I just love that idea. So when, as Walter urged us all to vote, I hope you do. I hope you vote tomorrow with heart and conscience. And I hope that if you lose, you take that not you lose, but if your candidate loses, I hope you take that comment from Ventura to say, if you voted with heart and conscience, you have not wasted a vote, because the candidate that doesn't win sees your vote and is encouraged by that. And when you vote in your life, with your time, with your energy, with your soul, with your heart, with your finances, to choose to dedicate yourself with heart and conscience to those things, to yourself and to others and to the whole planet, within your sphere of influence. So let's help each other do that more and better. I know you help me all the time. Let's help each other on our gatherings, when you phone someone up during the week, whatever, and encourage people to do that. So that's what I wanted to emphasize today about the vote. I hope you've got just a little oomph of appreciation for those people that went before you as you head to the polls. A lot of people sacrificed a whole lot for all of us to be able to go, and even now we haven't got it down well, and we hear from the south of us that that's trying to be changed, and so we ache for that as well. But to vote for life, to vote for self, to vote for others, to vote for the planet in all areas of our life with heart and with conscience. Thank you for your attention to that. A little bit of it went kind of quickly because we had such a rich sharing time, which is always good. But sorry if it went a little fast for some of you, but you Google women's organizations and read up on it yourself and cheer them on in your own home as you look at things. So I will say, I'm going to go back to my gallery view here so I can see you all. Have a great week. Hopefully some of you will see each other at the polls. I'm sorry that some of you couldn't become Canadian citizens by tomorrow from England and from Africa there. It would be we'd be glad to have you, but you can be with us in your hearts as we vote tomorrow. And our dearest and wish is hope that our country and your countries are led by people with heart and conscience. Farewell, take care. So good to see you all. So good to be back. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
See you Tuesday for
Scott.
wellness.
Thanks, Scott.
Thursday for coffee with Mike. Take care.
Thank you, Scott. Well done.